In section 4.3 from the Pearson book, we're going to talk about modeling with quadratic functions. This section is going to require us to do some review of old materials, stuff we did in Algebra 1. When you know the vertex and a point on a parabola, we use vertex form to write the equation of the parabola. But what if I don't know the vertex and I just know 3 points that lie on the outside of the parabola? How can I find the equation? Well, if I use standard form, y equals ax squared plus bx plus c, and I remember that the ordered pairs tell me what x and y are, I can plug each of these 3 ordered pairs that lie on a particular parabola into that equation, and I'm going to be left with a system of equations. The system we're going to be left with is unlike one that you've seen before, but it is very similar to systems you solved in Algebra 1. So we're going to show you how to do it here. So I'm going to start by using the ordered pair 0, 0, and I'm plug 0 in for x, 0 in for y. When I do that, I get 0 is equal to a times 0 squared is 0, plus b times 0 is 0, plus c. So I end up getting 0 equals c. Now I'm going to do this again with 1, negative 2. Y is negative 2, so I get negative 2 is equal to, alright, so when I plug in 1 for x, I get a times 1 squared, which is 1a, plus b times 1, which is b, plus c. Now I'm going to plug in negative 1, negative 4. Negative 4 is equal to, negative 1 when you square it is a positive 1. So I get 1a. b times negative 1 is negative 1b plus c. Now I want you to notice that I've already determined that c is equal to 0. I can now plug in 0 into each of these equations in place of c. Well, what I'm left with is 2 equations where I don't know a and b. If I rewrite these equations as a plus b equals negative 2 and a minus b equals negative 4, I get what's called a system of equations. One of the ways that we solve systems of equations was by something called elimination. Elimination was the method where you would add the 2 equations together and see what you're left with. Well, a plus a is 2a. b plus negative b cancels, equals negative 2 plus negative 4 is negative 6. Well, that's an equation I know how to solve, and now I know a is equal to negative 3. So I'm actually almost done with the problem. I almost know what a, b, and c are. I know c, I know a. Now I need to find out what b is. In order to find b, I can plug negative 3 in place of a into either of these equations. It doesn't matter which one I choose, I'll get the same answer. So I'll use the first one here. I'll do the negative 2 is equal to a is negative 3 plus b. So b must be 1. Well, now I know that what a, b, and c are. Now I can plug this back into the standard form. So y is equal to negative 3x squared plus 1x plus 0, because c is 0. Now that isn't the vertex form, but they didn't ask me for vertex form. So I'm going to leave my equation in standard form. Again, what I did was I started by plugging each of the 3 ordered pairs into the standard equation. I ended up with 3 equations. One of them was already solved for me. I had already figured out c was 0. When I found out c was 0, I just plugged 0 in for c into these other 2 equations. What I was left with was called a system of equations. And one of the easiest ways of solving a system of equations is something called elimination, where you add the 2 equations together and one of the variables eliminates. Well, since the b is eliminated, I found out a was equal to negative 3. And once I found out that a was negative 3 and c was 0, it didn't matter which equation I plugged back into to find out what C was, or sorry, B. So I picked this equation here and found out that B was 1. Then plugged A, B, and C back into the original standard form. The rest of this section, which is comparing some quadratic models, using a quadratic model, using a quadratic regression, it's going to require us to learn some things on the graphing calculator. So don't worry about the fact that I'm not putting that information in this video. This is something that I'm going to have to do with you in class. What we're going to do is we're going to learn how to put information into the graphing calculator and have the graphing calculator write the equation for us. There are some steps in the book, and I believe that there is a graphing calculator lab, I guess I could call it, that I could give you guys to help you out, and I will find that. But the rest of the information from this particular section will need to be done in class. The only thing that I could really do was show you the simplistic case of taking 3 points on a parabola and writing a quadratic equation for it. Anything outside of that requires an awful lot more algebra than you've had to do in the past. So the rest of the material from this section I will show you personally.